Okay, it's November 5th. It's about 4 o'clock p.m. Pacific. This is Gary Hent standing in for Ryan. Ryan may or may not join the meeting. If he does, we'll continue. If not, we will discuss the third item on the agenda. If he does not, we'll reschedule this meeting
Gary?
based on availability. So we're going to go to the...
I just got a text from Ryan.
Pardon me?
I just got a text from Ryan.
What did he say? He can't text me. That's why he texted you.
Yeah, I'm in no service right now. We should have service soon, so if you guys can hang on for a few, I'll be on the call. That was at 5:02 my time. Actually, okay. 5:02 I guess you guys it's done.
Okay, so let's proceed with 1 and 2, and we'll get Ryan's affirmation on them afterwards. The Spyro Sokas, I spoke extensively. Ryan recommended him. He seems enthused. He's a video guy. He's done video work. He's good at finding raw footage and everything. And the reason that I wanted this on the special meeting is if we do go live on Monday after Sunday's meeting, get everything up, I've got Lisa Payne-Nager has already drafted a press release for the grand opening, for want of a better term, and I wanted to get a video for the grand opening as well, and Spyro being the video man in Tier 2, along with Lisa being a writer and distribution source in Tier 2, to get the three of us together and work up a good presentation that we can present to the board on Sunday to approve to be the grand opening. So now I've given you, the first one didn't have a signature. I sent it back to him, had him put a signature. We're accepting typed in signatures. As far as background, Ryan, I don't know if his has come back. Mine came back as squeaky clean as Dennis's. I'm not on the watch list. I'm not a child molester. And it appears that they only do criminal in the county that you show as residence. Ryan had to put in 2 addresses, probably not enough time in Montana, so he might end up having 2 criminal record searches in the county. So we're really not sure unless, Tim, unless you've got a... somebody that had a criminal record or other factors rather than just the same thing we've gotten on Dennis, May, and probably on Ryan, to see if this is viable, if we need to look for a more detailed background check. That aside, though, what Ryan concurs that we bring him on. If we do find anything dissatisfactory, we remove him from Tier 2. But that allows me to go ahead, because I don't want to go ahead without the board's permission, to work with Spyro. So I'd like to ask that we approve Spyro's SUCAS that you have the application on for Tier 2 public relations. Dennis, you've spoken with him too, so that I can proceed in the next 3 days, getting everything ready for our grand opening.
Yeah, I spoke with Spiro, and I'm good with him. He seems to be...
Pardon? I can't quite hear you.
I've spoken with Spiro, and he seems to be a good fit for the PR, and maybe a little bit on the research side, but primarily the PR side. I'm good with him.
Now, Tim and John, you don't know the guy, so you're going to be relying on a reputation and the application he gave us.
Right. I'm thinking, I don't know if it must have been my computer. It seemed like the application that got sent to me was just blank. I tried pulling it up. I don't know, maybe it took a minute to load.
If the PDF comes in, you might have to zoom in to read it.
Okay. Well, from what I did read and, everything and trusting everyone's judgment, he's got a yay from me.
Yeah.
Tim?
I'm good.
Okay, now the second item I've spoken to both Ryan and Tim about, and we did VOIP, and then something that I read a few days ago, which I thought was fascinating, really, is in Arizona they've created a coalition between VOP, ABR, and 4 other organizations, 6.
Yep.
They've created a coalition, and we need coalitions, not command structures. And so they've done what I really haven't seen done elsewhere, and from what Tim told me, other people are interested in joining that coalition, and this is working together but not subordinate to, which allows various, well, VOP, for example, I think I've explained before, potentially is our kitchen and hospital and sanitary facilities if we have an operation that, like the Bundy Ranch, that Lewis Arthur is very much inclined to support an operation like the Bundy Ranch, any OMD operation, and they would set up the facilities, which releases the let's say armed manpower to do their duties and not have to worry about the details of the train. A simple aid station where each unit would probably have a medic assigned, and mess facilities, and now he's got the CP tents to go, which is one of the things we discussed back when we were looking at Bundy 2. He's got the tents to set up for the mess hall and cooking facilities and everything, and acquiring some equipment that he would bring to the function.
Yeah, he's got, on the Bravo base, I think he has 4 GP mediums.
And those are the ones we were talking about before. They're rather expensive. That he got them donated, I understand.
Yeah. And I've got the feelers out with some people who support us and they're in the military surplus business, and they're going to start looking around, see if they can find some more GP mediums for us.
Okay, well, Lewis, like I say, has indicated to me that if there's a Bundy-type operation, that they'll come up with the preppers and prepare it. So, in a sense, that's the coalition between us and the preppers that was worked on for a while. But at any rate, it led to another thought, and that thought was we made a sanctioned event out of VOP. It's level 1. It could escalate to level 2, but there's no anticipation of it in its long term. So it's not something you put a call out for, but if OMD is going to be a seal of approval for events, then it makes sense for us to also sanction ABR, Arizona Border Recon, as a sanctioned event. Ongoing, could escalate, probably won't, either one of them. But we're getting our name out and recognition over working with other people, which I think is instrumental to the broad acceptance of the whole concept of OMD. So before you know is, do we authorize a sanctioned event? Reason for timeliness on this, again, is with the go-ahead from the board, I will go ahead and work up something like I did for VOP and have it ready for the board on Sunday. I'll work with Tim on it, and then I'll have for the board on Sunday something for them to approve to be part of the grand opening package.
Sounds good to me. But it could escalate because I just found out today that the Sinaloa cartel has just teamed up with the Cartel New Generation, also known as the Jalisco Cartel. They're the ones who shot down the Mexican helicopter, and these guys are some crazy mothers, the Cartel New Generation.
Well, there's always been a possibility, and if that's where we have to go and call people to, then that's what we have to do. So we might as well get it on board now under the supportive umbrella of OMD as a sanctioned event. And if it does that,
right,
then we're ready to go. So,
okay.
Anybody got any questions of Tim or me?
Nope.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Everybody's good with it. So we've got approval on both of those. And like I say, Ryan has approved both as well. Well, that's the first 2 items on the agenda, and we did get it in 10 minutes. Damn. Dennis, can you text Ryan and ask him what his ETA to coverage is?
I can check, but I'm willing to bet that he's trying to call as he's driving, so he'll get it to us as soon as he can.
Okay, well, just wait. Is there? I can brief you to some degree. I sent out a brief. This is based on a conversation that Ryan and I had, and subsequently Ryan had brought up the issue of, is there anything we can do without them? Can we have a grand jury? And when I told him I was doubtful, but then he called me later with Ammon Bundy. He'd met with him in Burns, up where the Hammonds are, and we had a conference call. He put it on speakerphone actually, and so we were talking about it. And something occurred to me that we could proceed without it. But I had put out a call for grand jury members based on what John Ritzheimer was asking for. And right now, I've only had one person volunteer for the grand jury, so I don't expect we're going to get cooperation for a grand jury. But I suggested that we could perhaps prepare an indictment laying out the charges against the government, which is option 2. And, read option 2. It would be to get them to rescind or to overturn the decision of the appellate court. Now, that's a very risky situation. It quite easily could lead to a flashpoint. But at Ryan's request, I put my head to the grindstone, or nose to the grindstone, I guess, to try and come up with something that could be justified. I think I could justify our action adequately with the history of what happened at the ranch and, more detail. But there's no doubt that there's a high level of risk in that. That could go to level 5. The other one, option 3, was one that Ammon brought up, and his idea was that he buy or lease the allotments from the Hammonds, and then he goes and sets fire on them to see what happened. Now, that becomes good marketing if they don't come right away. With the Hammonds, they came after 11 years on the first fire and 6 years on the second fire. So there would probably be a delay, but from a press standpoint, if Ammon set the fires to clear the range and make it grow better, which both ranges or the allotments have so far, then that our press coverage that, look, the thing happened, and they haven't come in to arrest anybody this time, and this begins to point to the fact that the $400,000 and the 5 years in prison is strictly a method of the government stealing the land, because they won't be able to pay the $400,000 fine. They all end up losing the ranch, and the government has, by the order in the court, the judgment of the court, the BLM will have first option to purchase if the land is put on the market. And that's written in the court order. So
pennies on the dollar.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the valuation would be if there was a competitive bidder. BLM would simply have to beat their price, but the fact is they want to steal the land. They want to get it. And they're using our money, so it doesn't matter what the dimes on the dollar is. If somebody bid $2 million, they'd bid $2,100,000, and they get it. But they have first option, and the deals aren't in the order, but it gives them the option to be involved in any purchase. So, we see the picture, and I think it can be painted for the press that this is an effort to steal the land from them, that it took them years to figure out how they could do it. That's why they waited until 2012 to go to court. So, and so when Ryan, now they apparently just, I guess they just left the meeting with Mr. Hammond. Ryan and Ammon were supposed to record the conversation so we could all hear the inflections in voice, hear what Mr. Hammond had to say, and judge whether he's going to be option 1, where they're like Cliven Bundy and the Bundy family fully behind something, or whether we shift to option 2 if option 2 is viable. Ammon Bundy may go ahead with option 3 by himself regardless of what we do. And so that's what's on the table before us. Now we need Ryan's report to get current on it, because we've had no direct contact with the Hammonds until today. So anybody got anything else to discuss in the interim?
No. Sounds pretty cut and dry.
Okay, Tim, is there any indication of activity with regard to ABR on the border?
By that, what do you mean?
Increase in activity on the other side? Anything that you've been observed that shows an intensification?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I guess I keep stepping on the DEA's dick down here because I got word the other day that I'm going after vehicles that the DEA is watching, and I told the person who told me, I said, well, you tell the DEA that if they want to play secret squirrel, then how in the hell am I supposed to know they're there? They know where I live, they know who I am, they know my phone number, so come down, talk to me, and call, and let's work together. But
keep you in the loop.
Yeah, but if you don't
together or you work alone, but as long as we know you're working alone, so we can stay out of the picture. Yeah, the two options.
Yeah.
Really.
Because I told him, I says, I'll keep doing what I do because this is my town, and I am the neighborhood watch. I am the law. I am the sheriff. I am whatever you want to call it, but I'm not going to stop unless you come sit down with me. But yeah, the activity's going up. I missed out on a southbound cartel member on Saturday. I was driving up the road, and I looked in my mirror and saw a car going the other way, and he pulled off the side of the road. I saw him passenger jump out, reach back in, grab a large pack, threw it on his back, and then disappeared into the brush. I swung my vehicle around, called Tucson, told them they had a southbound bailout. I says the vehicle's heading south still. They stopped the vehicle. They went through it with a fine-tooth comb, and I turned around. I told BP where he bailed out at. You'll see my truck. I stopped my truck and started trying to haul ass through the brush, but holy crap, right now after 20-some-odd inches of rain this past summer, the grass is waist-high and everything else is thick. And I followed him probably for about 100 yards, and then I lost his track. And but southbound with a pack like that, that's cash. So he was probably humping at least $500,000 back into Mexico.
I've got a question. If DEA does ask you to back off on something, why don't you track DEA and see if they're escorting these people to a successful delivery?
Oh yeah, yeah.
That'd be nice. Something like that.
Yeah. Because I've never seen the DEA down here. I didn't even know they operated over here. But I guess
saw them?
No, and I guess they're operating on both sides because I heard it from two different people, one from Mexico and one from the United States, saying, "Hey, dude, you're fucking up their operation." It's like, nice.
Who's
but
fucking up, huh?
Yeah. So let's see what else is going on down here. I recently was donated 6 trail cameras, and I put those out a few days ago on one major dope trail. One's both a dope trail and the southbound. I put it on the trail that I saw the guy bailing with the backpack on. So I've got 6 cameras out there. I have another 6 on the way that people are donating. So, I mean, 12 cameras, you're looking at about $2,500 for 12 cameras.
That's a good deal.
So, and one of them is coming from somebody I've been talking to on the phone. His number's blocked. He's using an anonymous name, but he's got my P.O. box off of our website, and he's been sending trail cams, and He says he wants to do more. He says he can't do what I do. He can't let me know who he is. He's over in the L.A. area, close to Hollywood, he said, and that's about as far as he wanted to go. And I think he's somebody in the entertainment industry. And he's already shelled out over $1,400 in a week. And he says, I'll be sending you more. You just tell me what you need when I call, or email me and tell me what you need, and I'll make sure it happens.
Tim's got a sugar daddy, huh?
Hey.
It's always nice to have.
Yeah. But yeah, the mountains right now are just going ballistic. I mean, what was it? 2 weeks ago, they found the 7 bodies about 10 miles from me. 10 miles west, they found 7 bodies, all stripped naked, shot in the head, tortured, and one of them was decapitated. The week prior to that, about 5 miles west of me, just inside the reservation, they found 2 more bodies, both shot in the head. I think they're warring for the area right in here because it's so lucrative. I think it's the Sinaloa cartel trying to fight off the Tijuana cartel.
What about VOP? Have they sent any veterans down there where they're going to be pretty active full-time people?
Negative, not yet.
Well,
not yet.
That happens because we started thinking, too, that if we occupy the Hammond Ranch, we could get some veterans up there, and as long as we can feed, clothe, and house them, and, I guess you're going to have to give them some money for cigarettes and things like that occasionally, but or maybe give them special duty and pay them for, building something or something like that, it would be a benefit to them, especially the single ones, but perhaps even some married ones where the woman could do cooking and things like that. I hate to sound sexist, but I am. I was raised that way.
Well, from what I've seen up at the camps, it's a couple of people who are the volunteers that cook everything and everything else, and the homeless ones are the ones that just wait until it's ready and then they step up.
Yeah, but if you could get those people down there to participate in the border operations, if they're physically fit, some of these people have probably wasted their body away, but they might come back to help with good meals now with what Lewis is doing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of potential. At least it gives them something besides wandering the street and sitting waiting for a meal.
Yeah. I think that veterans coming from there is going to take a while because they're either full-blown alcoholics or full-blown fucking drug users. So they're going to have to be.
They're in no position to be coming down there. The veterans, at least. I mean, but the volunteers that are there helping is who we could get to join forces with.
Well,
but you've got another group who joined this alliance, 3 Up they call them, which is basically UP3, which stands for United Patriots 3%.
Yeah, I know. They're Driver.
Yeah.
Driver Ray?
Yeah.
Okay. Remember
him and I had a fallout about a year and a half or so ago because he came down. He was part of the Arizona State Militia, and they sent some guys down. And Driver Ray has got a fucked up back. I mean, he's had multiple operations and everything else, and Driver Ray was on heavy medications, and he nodded out here, and I took off with the rest of the ASM guys to go check some trails and stuff to get them used to this stuff. And we come back, and he was snapping out of it, and he's going, "Where the fuck do you guys go?" It's like, well, fuck, dude, I'm going to sit and wait here until your nod wears off.
Driver is one of the guys that volunteered to come stay at my house when I was putting on the first big rally back in May. And him and his group of guys came. I was very appreciative. It was all volunteer basis, and they just showed up. It was really cool of them. They stayed with me in my house and everything. And then I was like, I want to get more involved with you guys. Like you watch my 6, and I know you'll watch my 6, so I want to return the favor, get involved. So I went to a few of their group functions. They got a few really good, knowledgeable cats in their group, and but me and Driver just didn't jive together. And I think he saw kind of me as being a bit of a threat to his leadership. Yep. And that's why it was like I had to go, because I definitely could have taken the guys he had, and I could have moved mountains with those guys. So, but we're still on a mutual we're still friends, and we just agreed to go our separate ways, and I'll work with them on any other future events and stuff. We're just, it's all
and that's
on the same team.
That's the way I feel, because when they were all here Sunday, and we were talking, and he's like, I never badmouthed you or anything else. It's like, really? I said, you ranted and raved all over Facebook about me and everything else. I said, but I didn't say anything, and then it got into the fisherman thing. He's like, well, my ops over there, we got nothing but dope over there, and you got nothing but illegals over here. I said, no, we don't have any illegals over here. We go up in the mountains where it's nothing but dope. And he wants to be the big man on campus. It's going to be tough and everybody else who was here, I talked to privately after Driver was gone, and they're going, you did a damn fine job of biting your tongue, and because we noticed
lost a lot of guys. He lost a lot of guys recently as well. Some people just didn't care for his character either. I guess he's, and it's none of my business, and I'm not spreading anything. I'm just saying he's a married man, and maybe he got with another chick that he shouldn't have gotten with, and it just sabotaged his character, and a lot of the people left his side, and they've come back to me like trying to like rekindle the fire, and I'm just like, that's fine, but I don't lead a militia or anything. Like I've kind of been a lone ranger on a lot of this stuff. And Gary, I not to totally change the subject, but I've been thinking a bit more about the Islam thing that we talked about at the last thing, and I kind of had an idea for how OMD could take an approach. Given
before you go there, let me say something to Tim. Tim, you have promised me, and I need it by tomorrow morning, the timeline of ABR,
right,
success, and the name of the coalition member, so I can write that report. So I've got to have them by tomorrow morning, because I'm going to have a conference call with Spiro and Lisa, so we can get this stuff together. Okay, back to you, John. I hated to interrupt, but that was dealing with Tim's issue. But
you got anything to add to that, Tim?
Nope.
Okay. So I was looking at like my kind of situation going on, and you see now that I got some support from Governor Doug Ducey, if an investigation does get launched into this mosque, it would probably be pretty good for OMD to then, the fact that I've included the Quran in this and talked about just how all they had to do was tell these people to read the Quran. Well, we know that happens in all the mosques. So it kind of opens a gateway for people across the nation to go and file their own complaint with their own local attorney general wherever there's a mosque. It doesn't just have, yes, this one has had 5 terrorists come from it, so it's a bit more on the radar, but it kind of helps us open the gateway to any other attorney general out there to be able to open an investigation and put pressure on these guys as a nonprofit and be able to go through where their money is going with a fine-tooth comb.
All I need from you is that letter to the Attorney General with your signature on it.
Right. Okay.
Because that's the intention, is to create a PDF package that we can send out. I'll post it on, access it on Facebook. I might even log in. I don't know anything. I don't know yet. I've got to get it written first, but I want to move. I want to move on that.
I should just text you a picture of my signature and let you just cut and paste. I might be able to get over to a printer tonight and get that over to you.
Okay, well, I've
again,
got my plate full enough that, I'll pull your plate in once I get that.
Okay.
Dennis, I don't have anything that you have to provide me, I don't think. I hope you don't feel left out.
Maybe some flowers just because.
No, I got an email from Ryan that said to go ahead and scrub, and then he gave me some new times, but I'm trying to figure out if he wants it at 8 tonight or 8 tomorrow night.
I would guess 8 tonight because why don't you tell
I don't know why he would have told me to scrub it then at the start.
Well, so that we don't...
Because that's only 20 minutes from now.
Well, that's your time. Ask him what time zone he's in. He's probably Mountain Time, which would be, right now, it would be 5:30 Mountain Time. So that would be 2.5 hours from now.
It was 8 Eastern Standard.
He said Eastern Standard?
Yeah, he listed it out. He said, just a sec. Wait one, I got something in. Yep, he wants to do it at 8 Eastern Standard, 5 PST, and 6 Mountain Time today. So 20 minutes from now.
Well, that gives me 20 minutes. That gives me 20 minutes to write up that thing for you, Gary.
Okay, and John won't have time to get down to the printer yet, so at least I'll get one of them. So let's just continue this meeting until 26 minutes from now. I'm going to stop the recording, and we'll start a new recording when we get back. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Sounds good. So we'll call back in then.
Call back, yeah.
Okay.
Call back in. No notice will be sent out, but call back in about 25 minutes.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Bye. Continuing the meeting at 5 o'clock, 5:02 Pacific, from earlier today, and all members of the advisory board are present. This is Gary Hent, and I'm handing it over to the chair, Ryan Payne.
Hey guys, I appreciate your patience as I'm traveling through what someone called the desolation of Oregon, but I got a pretty beautiful view of the sun setting across this dry lake bed that's not so dry at the moment, and so I'm glad to speak with you all. I want to make this statement before we begin. Address before we two issues.
We've addressed
that. What's that?
We've addressed them. I explained to the board that you had given an affirmative vote to both of them, so those are dispensed with. They're approved. You give your affirmative to both of them, right?
Correct.
Okay. So
okay. Well, then I believe that what we're about to discuss is very likely to be the next big event that's going to go on, and it's going to depend a lot on the sheriff now, as we've laid some things in his lap, and I'll get into that. But essentially, we have such a gross overreach with this one that we can't possibly ignore it, and to do so would cede so much ground. A precedent of corruption and tyranny would have been set to such a high degree that I'm not sure exactly how it would come back without some form of violent resistance. And so I think that this is a very heavy matter that we're about to discuss. So with that, I'll move on to what's going on. Has everybody had a chance to review the brief on the Hammond situation?
Yep.
I hope so. I kind of went a little bit further and explained the ramifications of option 2 and where option 3 came in.
All right.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Then I'm not going to go into any more details because there are more infringements and such involved, and sitting with Mrs. Hammond today, and Hammond Bundy sitting with Steve Hammond yesterday, made pretty clear that they want the land and they're going to do whatever it takes to get it. And they've already taken quite a bit of the land. One of the things I think that wasn't in that brief is that the Hammonds originally owned another ranch adjacent to the one that they own now, and that they were forced to sell that ranch in order to put together enough money to keep their cattle operation going. And in selling that ranch, they were able to put enough money not only to keep the operation going, but to buy the ranch adjacent to them. So they've already lost land, and they stand to lose a whole lot more. Aside from just the land grab itself, is the issue of the obvious corruption of the courts and the exercise of authority in jurisdictions that they don't have, that they have no authority within. And so it's pretty egregious, and it's very obvious, and I think we need to do whatever we can, and the Bundys feel the same at this point, and are willing to work closely with us to ensure that this gets all of the attention that it needs in order to garner a response if the vote goes that way here. As far as the Hammonds go, at this point, we weren't able to meet with Dwight Hammond, who's the father, the owner of the ranch. He was out doing some other things, and as far as we can tell, they don't really want to talk to anybody about support. Steve Hammond, the fact that we just showed up on their doorstep is kind of how we got in, because they didn't feel like they wanted to. They weren't going to be rude and tell us to go away. But Ammon helped out yesterday with the ranch for a few hours while he was talking to Steve. His opinion is that Steve is broken. I believe he's 43 years old or something like that, right around there. He has 3 kids. One's in college, and then the other 2 will still live with him. And he's broken down to the point where they don't want to fight anymore. He, as Ammon described it, he's at a point of peace with the decision to submit themselves to the sentence, the imprisonment, and he doesn't want to do anything to disrupt that peace that he has. Of course, Ammon asked him directly whether or not he believed that when he got out of prison that it would all be over, and he said no. So he basically where he's at now is submission, complete submission. And he just wants to.
Let me interrupt here I want to clarify something if I could. I thought my understanding from Good's article is if they go to prison, they're going to lose the land because they can't pay the $400,000. Is that correct or not?
They have a ranch hand that lives on the property, and he is probably capable of performing the daily tasks involved with running the ranch, but he's not a tested manager, so they're not positive that he'll be able to do it. So given that, he's really the only other option they have as far as keeping the ranch going. So it's kind of it's a connection of 2 instances. If they go to prison, then the management of the ranch will be gone, and thus they won't be able to afford to pay the fines. Now, Ammon and I advised him today, that the idea would be that they do not go to prison, nor do they pay the fines. So we'll see where all that goes. They're going to have a family discussion and such. Mrs. Hammond, so that's kind of where Steve is at. He didn't want us to come back to talk today. And when he found out that we were talking with his mom today, he was pretty mad about it with her and told her, don't talk to these guys, don't meet with them. She came back to her house and invited us back in again, and we had another couple hours of discussion. So quite honestly, the most fight that's still in the family resides within Grandma, as she referred to herself. And these other men were once, they're ranchers, they're strong, tough guys, and they did spend some time fighting all of this. They've just been broken. Mr. Hammond, I can only go based on what my conversation with him before, which was essentially the same as the son, that they just don't believe that there's anything that can be done. So that's what
they both served the prison sentences from the first decision.
Correct.
They did.
Yep. So you've got double jeopardy, you've got Bill of Rights infringements. The list goes on how these guys are being trampled. So that's the Hammond side of it, where at this point it looks like there's not going to be a request. Mrs. Hammond, Susan, she's very sharp on the Constitution, on natural law, and on how they've been trampled. She's very familiar with the Oregon state law, so she's no dunce. There's no doubt about that. And I think that if anyone were going to convince the father and son that they need to take a stand, then she's probably it. But as I said before, they were displeased that she was meeting with us in the first place. So they're going to talk about it, and then she has my contact information, and she'll be giving us a call or not. What Ammon was very clear on was that regardless of whether or not they desire assistance, and if you guys read the letter that I forwarded from Ammon, from the Bundy family, which Ammon put together, then it makes clear their position that it doesn't really matter whether or not the Hammonds request assistance or desire assistance in any form, because we the people have an obligation to stand against tyranny wherever it resides, particularly within our own borders. And so that's their position. And we went to meet with the sheriff after we got done with Mrs. Hammond. And the sheriff is he's a sharp guy. He's a military veteran, retired military veteran. He was very excited to meet with us. Apparently, just today, his county attorney had handed him an email from the Bundy Ranch blog site, that is the letter that Ammon put together. So he said that he read the article, or read the letter, and it wasn't very long after he had read it that Ammon called him to schedule our meeting today. So he proclaimed that he doesn't believe in coincidences and such. He was pretty anxious to meet with us, and he was very polite. It was obvious at different points of the conversation that he's most likely thinks the way that we think. He's liberty-minded. He even made some statements along the lines of, at some point in this country, the line is going to have to be drawn, and people are going to have to stand on it. And even to the point of alluding to violent revolution and the people coming together and making it. And so he's seems like he's pretty keen on what's going on. When Ammon got through telling him what he wanted to hear, the particulars of what happened at the Bundy Ranch, after which one of his statements was that no matter what happens, he will not be allowing federal agents to come in and confiscate weapons or perform any of the other numerous infringements that they want to perpetrate on the people. It won't be happening in his jurisdiction. But coupled with that, he didn't say directly, but he alluded to. One second. Luckily, I'm coming down with a pretty nasty cold when all this is going on. So, anyway, he said that he won't be allowing violence of any sort to be taking place in his county, regardless of which side it comes from. And so it was made clear to him that if the decision is made to defend the Hammonds, and he also does not take up that stand himself, that we will be defending the Hammonds regardless of anybody's proclaimed authority or anything like that. So, which he didn't argue with, he didn't disagree with it. He said that he believes that the people are going to have to take a stand because government at all levels is failing them. So it sounds to me more or less like he was proclaiming this, I'll not be allowing that in my county, more as a matter of protocol and procedure, as opposed to something he actually believes in. Because by all rights, his proclamations of belief were along the lines of a revolutionary idea, a movement of the people.
What scenario did you present to the sheriff?
I basically supported Ammon's statements, and I offered the sheriff a hypothesis or a scenario and asked his opinion of it. I said, if the Hammonds decide that they are not going to report in for their sentence, to serve out their sentence, then you have to be obviously aware that the federal government is going to send agents out to arrest them. And then I asked him, what are you going to do about that? Do you intend on stopping that? And he wouldn't answer at this time. Basically what he wants is, he wants every bit of information on this. He's going to his county attorney already to get familiar with it. But Ammon said he would provide him with whatever he could. I think that we should probably provide him with all of the facts, and then he's curious about the opinions of those facts.
Okay, so what you presented basically was option 1. Was option 3 even discussed with the sheriff?
Not in a particular sense. What was said is that at this point, it looks like there's going to be an effort to not allow the Hammonds to be arrested or serve 1 day in federal prison.
And he's supportive of that so long as he's not a player, but he would abide by Oregon law, not federal law, as far as allowing the feds in, I take it.
Not necessarily that he's not a player. We went into further discussion on the state of things and the progression of tyranny in this country and the corruption at all levels, and he's mostly in agreement with our mindset that this is where it's going. And so I made it clear to him that.
I think the way I'm looking at the sheriff is also he's a politician, and he's going to play it neutral probably until the last point. I think he's going to play it neutral until he sees who's going to come out on top, and then he's going to stand.
In my dealings with other sheriffs and elected law enforcement officials, I agree with you. And that was the first point that Ammon and I made when we walked out, was that, he was very supportive of everything we were saying, even to the point of essentially it was semi-obvious that he's most likely going to take a position of support of what we're saying and in support of the Hammonds. He just wants to clarify all that stuff. But I've had, I've been stroked by government officials before just to have them, reverse their actions as opposed to their statements. So I agree with you.
We have to rely on no reliance on the sheriff. Just hope that he does take the right side.
Right.
Right. Exactly that. And he, it was made clear to him that he has an opportunity at this point to, to begin that stand against the federal government. There's sheriffs who have done it, and it doesn't get publicized often, and definitely not massively. But, every time they do it, the federal government essentially just goes away once they realize who they're dealing with, and then I'm sure they make sure that monies go into getting that sheriff replaced with one that they can control. But so at this point, he's, he welcomed further contact. He wants to stay in contact with us and the Bundys. So he's interested in doing the right thing. We'll put it that way. So that's kind of where it's at. That's about all the information that I have.
Did you get the turn-in location and time and everything?
They don't have it. They were told that they would have it within 2 to 3 weeks of being sentenced, and now it's been over a month. They still don't have it.
What about getting the documents we talked about, you and I talked about?
At this point, there's no chance of that happening. Basically, they're not working with anybody at this point.
What's the name of that sheriff?
Talk to Hammond again. Let's see if he could track them down and get them to me. He knows where to look.
1 second, I'll get.
Is he there?
Who's that, Hammond?
Yeah.
No. David M. Ward, W-A-R-D.
All right. What county is that?
Harney, H-A-R-N-E-Y.
All right.
I really hate the fact that they're not working with us.
Say that again?
I said I really hate the fact that they're not working with us. That just makes it all the more difficult.
Well, it changes.
But you gotta look.
Yeah, it changes the plan of action. That's for sure.
And you got to look at it that they've been dealing now with this for 12 years. They're beat.
Right.
They didn't see any hope before. Now at the last second, you've got people who say they want to help, and they're like, "Wow."
Well, I made one statement as I was walking out the door, and she wrote this down, and she intends on telling her husband and son this specifically. But the statement that I made was, at this point, the decision that you guys have to make is whether you're going to watch as we defend your liberties, or you're going to stand with us as we defend your liberties. But regardless, it's looking like we're going to defend your liberties whether you want it or not. So
the question that has to be answered then somewhere along the line is, will they sit back, will they support us from a distance, sit back and do nothing, or will they oppose us? Now,
I don't think they're going to oppose us.
The family meeting, I know, but you're going to have to talk to her after they have the family meeting and assure that they're not going to oppose us, because everything else aside, that would be disastrous. I think that would be a condition that required us to walk away from it.
Well, yeah, I guess that I would have a contention with that. I mean, is the defense of liberty dependent on the support or lack thereof of the person in need of defense?
Well, there's that tough question for the remainder of the board. If somebody like Kim Davis told oath keepers, "I don't want you down here," what effect does that have on us? telling something that they can't abide by the law, that they've accepted the consequences of that law.
Yeah.
We're telling them they can't abide by the law, and they have already accepted the consequences of that law. Where do we stand if that's the image that goes out?
Yeah, the question is, do we allow then tyranny will move forward until people take a stand in front of it? And the analogy I used last night was with Ammon was that essentially the whether you have a request or not is what formulates where the barrier between tyrants and the oppressed is built. Is it built directly around the oppressed, or at some point does the barrier need to be moved closer and closer to the tyrants?
But I think what Gary's getting at is, we can step in and do something as long as they don't say, we don't want them here. We're accepting everything that is our thing, and if we just show up to defend their rights and everything else, and then they go out publicly and say, we didn't ask them here, we don't want them here, and so that's going to paint us as a bunch of rabble-rousers.
Yeah, they don't have. We're taking away from them the right to determine their liberty.
And we're I mean, they have that choice to turn themselves in over to the dark side. They could turn themselves in over to the dark side, or if they're not.
Or are we here? Are we here to stop? Are we here just to protect the light, or are we here to shine light on the darkness?
Well, I think.
Well, you can do that
without preventing them from turning themselves in.
Yeah, and without giving us a black eye.
Right, and the key thing is OMD is getting off the ground. Can we risk at this time looking like oath keepers in the Ken Davis affair? Regardless.
Don't get me wrong, Ryan. If they ask, we'll go running with fucking everything. But if they choose not to, there's other ways you can do it to bring that to light, like, standing out in front of the courthouse when they go to turn themselves in with posters saying, but if you go out there armed to the gills and say, we're not going to allow it to happen, and then they sit there and say, we didn't ask them to do this, we already accepted our fate, and we're willing to do it, that's going to make us look like a bunch of fucking lunatics.
So what's I guess what is the source of tyranny? Is the source of tyranny the acquiescence of the populace to the tyranny, or is the source of tyranny from the tyrants? And which needs to be addressed?
Let's look at it this way. We all have inherent or God-given or natural rights. Do we have the right, then, to deny them their right of choice? And I think
you disregarded my
in the conversation that the freedom of choice is necessary, and we're taking that freedom of choice away from them.
That statement disregards the question that I just posed.
Well, philosophically, you're right. But however, are we players in it? Do you have a right to go into another person's house and stop he and his wife from quarreling?
No, but I surely have the right to prevent the government from inflicting tyranny on the populace.
But we're not talking about the populace. We're talking about the Hammonds.
The Hammonds are a specific subject.
We're willing to do everything we can that is not. Everything we can, we're willing to do up until the point of to where I'm not going to kidnap them. We can't kidnap Hammonds just to be able to prevent the government from, to prevent them from turning themselves into where they're trying to go to start their sins. So it's kind of like a plan. It's plan A and plan B. We need to, if they don't want our support, we should still shed light on this tyranny that's taking place, and we oppose it as best we can without kidnapping somebody.
When will the determination, I guess, that from that point of view. And you know, we haven't gone into, Ammon and I spent a great deal of time last night discussing options on how to move the barrier from around the family if they don't request it, because I agree with what you're saying. You can't build the barrier around the family if they don't want it. But the tyranny still exists, and the question is, are you specifically defending, protecting the innocent from a tyrannical oppression, or is the goal to get rid of the tyrannical oppression?
Well, let's look at a probable scenario based on something you and I discussed yesterday, I think Emma was there too. If we go to the courthouse and ask for the rescission or the overturning of the decision of the appellate court, and we encircle the courthouse, nobody in, nobody out, and the Hammonds come up, if that's the turn-in point, and the Hammonds come up and want to go in, are we going to keep them from going in and turning themselves in? Are we going to physically restrain them from entering to abide by what the law, they accept the law, tells them they have to do?
And Ryan, when you first contacted me about this whole OMD thing, we had a conversation on the phone. And I said part of what needs to happen is we have to educate people. And if they choose to not accept our help, we can still start educating people that look at what's going on. Look at what's happening. Everybody's being educated by the government, you know, that's why everybody's so scared shitless of them. But we also have to educate people so that we don't look like we are the dirtbags, just wanting to start a fight somewhere.
Yeah, just doing what the government's doing.
Nope. Now, nobody is disputing what you're saying, Ryan, about when do we step up to tyranny. But we have to do it. We have to do it in the right way.
And OMD is still young, obviously. But what Gary just said also would be another awesome plan of attack. So we're not protecting the Hammonds, but we're surrounding a courthouse, and you're shut down. So rather than protecting the Hammonds, we're shutting down this illegal place.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, we're probably too young to be taking on to that. But
well, the question still arises, John, if we say nobody in, nobody out of the courthouse, basically lay siege to it, and the Hammonds come up and say we want to go turn ourselves in, do we stop them? Do we have the right?
Well, at that point, what we're saying is that there's no place for them to turn themselves into.
Right.
But are we going to physically restrain them, though, or are we going to, spread apart and allow them to walk in if they want to?
I think OMD is so young.
To go in? What?
Well,
yeah,
the youth of OMD is not really
nobody
relevant.
in, nobody out, and I know, but I'm just also looking at our success factor. Do we want to be a little blip on the map and then OMD gets wiped out like really quick, or I mean, because when you surround a courthouse, now we're talking National Guard, especially with armed patriots. So are we capable of ending that off? Are we, or do they just come in and crack us with tear gas and disperse us and arrest us, and now we're all just a little blip on the radar?
Well, you know what happens if they do that. That's not going to be tolerated.
I know what will happen in Portland, but I don't know what will happen around the rest of the country, because even patriots might say they were a fool to tell the people they couldn't turn themselves in. There's an easy way out even for other patriots. We have no right to keep them. Let's go back to another thing you and I discussed. Do you have a right to stop somebody from committing suicide, or do you only have a right to try and talk them out of committing suicide?
We only have the right to talk them out of it.
And that's exactly where we are, isn't it?
Yep. Because if they want to commit suicide by turning themselves in, we can't stop that.
And we'd look like fools.
Well, there's a gun sitting on the table across the room, and the person the Hammonds who want to commit suicide have to get up and walk over to that gun and pick it up and put it to their heads and pull the trigger. And I can tell you that regardless of their own free agency and those types of things, that I'm going to make sure that they can't get to that gun to shoot themselves if I know that that's their intention.
That's kind of oranges because that's not applicable here because they have accepted the edict of the court and they want to turn themselves in. That's a whole lot different, and it's not costing a life. It's costing them 5 years. They understand the consequences, and they know they risk their ranch. So they've made a rational decision not to commit suicide, but perhaps to give up their livelihood dependent on the ability of the guy to manage the ranch. So talking suicide...
Is there a differentiation in the what do you want to call it? Is there a level of importance differentiating life and liberty? Is life worth living without liberty? So the question is, and I use that analogy of the gun sitting on the table because it's applicable in the sense that the gun is the federal government, and the Hammonds are going to willingly walk over to that building and turn themselves in, effectively welcoming the gun to be put to their heads by another entity. It's not even...
So are you going to follow them around so that they can't get another gun on another table in another room in another building?
Or a bottle of pills, or whatever. I mean...
I personally think that our best course of action, they're already coming to terms with what they think has to be their fate. And I think, given that the fact that they don't want any help, we're still obligated to kind of rally the protesters. I think that's the best we can do at this point, and that's just my 2 cents right now.
Well,
that's probably where I'm going to.
I've got an opinion about protesting. Last time I saw protesting work was between, say, 1965 and 1972.
Yeah.
Millions of people were on the street on a single focus issue, and we ain't going to get that. So protesting's a waste of time. Unless the signs are on pitchforks, at least it's an implied threat at that point. But sticks on signs, they've G20, they don't work.
The only thing I was getting at that is just by shining light on.
I don't think that OMD wants to be involved in just protest issues. I mean, our purpose is not civil disobedience, but civil defiance. But we've got to have a good, clean task to work on.
I agree. I'm just saying the only reason I'm saying that is just to be able to still shed light to the issue rather than letting it get swept under the carpet. And it kind of just puts it in our resume that we don't agree with this.
Because
if we can't get all the documents, then we can't even put together an accurate picture. And I wouldn't want to ask people to go to a demonstration when they don't know what the whole picture is. The Bundy Ranch.
Yeah, that's fair.
Gentlemen,
can
I break in a minute? Gentlemen?
Yeah.
Can I ask Ryan a question, please?
Yes, sir.
Ryan, you and Emmett had a chance to talk about this pretty extensively and everything. You've heard some of the chat about what we can and can't do. I'd like to perhaps hear the results of your thoughts of what you might think would be viable at this point. Thank you.
I think that if the reason that I say that made that opening statement of the gravity of the situation is that the infringements here are so egregious and so obviously corrupt and such an abuse of power that it is an opportunity to rally support around the idea of halting the movement of the federal government in a particular direction. So if I were to reference a particular operational plan, and in a very general manner of speaking, then what we would have to do without a request is is make sure that there's nothing for the Hammonds to turn themselves in. That the entity, the source of the tyranny, the source of the oppression, has to be removed from the equation, or at least mitigated to the point of submittance with enough time to, that the Hammonds essentially are free by default. And so if I had to get more particular about it, something like what Gary said, laying siege to the courthouse, or wherever it is that they're supposed to turn themselves into, we need to remove. If we don't have a request, then you have to put that barrier closer to the tyrants, which means that we have to remove their ability to execute the sentence on the Hammonds.
Well, and that's what John was talking about.
On that. Yeah, but let's follow the extension on that. They can turn themselves into basically any federal agent. They don't necessarily have to have a physical place. So how would we go about removing their ability to do that? Is kind of what I'm trying to get on a practical note, regardless of some of the philosophicals, but how would we perhaps do it practically? And then we can see what's within the art of the possible.
I understand what you're saying. That yes, they can turn themselves into any federal entity, and therefore you're surely not going to be able to remove all of them all at once. It would have to be a focal point, and then the question becomes: is it just an ideological target, or is it a specific target that we're defending against?
When is this?
I see your point.
When's the family meeting supposed to take place?
I imagine it'll be soon. She didn't say specifically.
So I would say we're going to hold up on anything until we figure out what they decide. I mean, we can draw up plans to ring the courthouse and everything else, but, I mean, that's about it. Until
Dennis, do you have a... Yeah, I agree with you that all we can do at this point is postulate and then decide on a plan of action or not. Dennis, what are your thoughts on, or do you have any thoughts on the question that you just asked? Or
I guess my thoughts are is that it's extremely difficult to limit the access of federal agents to the area. And then you're forced to go back to where, as someone suggested, the potential kidnapping of the Hammonds, which doesn't seem to be the best idea.
We can't do that, yeah.
Right. So that's why I was going more to, if we can't come up with anything practical, then maybe it's not within the art of the possible right now. It may not be palatable for us to say that. But we have to kind of, again, just sort through the options. And I was wondering, you and Eamon had some time, and, you're obviously put a lot of energy into it and focused on it, just what your thoughts were as to the viability of some of the scenarios. I would agree that it's all speculation until we find out whether or not they're going to request, whether they're going to stand by and not interfere, or whether they choose to interfere. And that perhaps is the answer Mrs. Hammond is going to give you.
I have one more suggestion, and I'm hoping I don't regret it. And I know it's an off-the-wall idea, but what if we offered them a way out to where they are able to wait it out? And by what I mean by this is we're already sitting here willing to go toe-to-toe with the federal government. So what is kidnap? What if we know that we're not really kidnapping these people, and we're giving them a way out. We're letting them know that, okay, your instructions are to just stay in here in the house. If we fail, we can make it look like we did kidnap you. We have you locked in a room in the house. So if we fail, they have a way out to where it's not going to implement, or it's not going to, put any more impact on them.
The problem with that is if they say they were kidnapped, then we're subject to criminal penalties for kidnap, especially if they cross state lines. But even if they don't cross state lines.
Aren't we subject to other stuff? I mean, again, if we fail, we're talking about going toe-to-toe with the federal government.
Right, we are. But let's say, the federal government can come back later and charge us with kidnap if they say they were kidnapped. If they say who kidnapped them under pressure, then, we're going to foreclose on your property for the $400,000 unless you tell us who the kidnappers were, something like that, and they give names, then some people are going to prison or we're going to have to defend them. So now we've got something beginning to mushroom out into other things.
Yeah, and the one difficulty that I have with it is if at the basis of any action the cause is to maintain a high degree of morality, then I don't think we would want to taint that notion of morality with something like kidnapping, even if it were feigned.
Right. Now, basically, we've got three doors. We can enter any one of the three. We have an option of entering any one of the three doors unless we close one. Those doors are that they support us from a distance, tacit approval. Door number 2 is silence on their part. They will not get involved. They will allow us to proceed and see how it turns out. And door number 3, obviously, is where they come out in opposition to us. So my question is, do we want to leave 3 doors open, or do we want to close one of those doors now from a practical standpoint so we know where we're coming from?
Well, I can probably get, have a conversation with them, or I don't know if I can get anything signed particularly, but I can probably get a statement from them as to whether or not they would be silent or against us if we were to pursue action.
I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about us. If they are going to oppose what we do we want to shut door number 3 now, and absent them accepting door number 1 or door number 2, we leave it alone because it's not worthy of the risk inherent in pursuing it? Or do we want to leave all 3 doors open? I think we can make that decision now.
That's a pretty simple vote. So the decisions are, we can put that up to a vote right now. The decision is, if the on one side a yes vote here will say that we will not perform any action if the Hammonds are to come out against any action in support of them. Am I correct in what you're getting at here?
If I can make it simpler, how many think we should leave door 1 open? I agree to open on door 1.
Yes.
What?
Door 1 being that they support what we're doing, even tacitly.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, door 2
yes.
is where they sit back and do nothing but agree not to turn against us. We leave that
yes.
door open.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, door
yes.
3 is where the indication is that they will turn against us if we pursue trying to help them protect their life, liberty, and property.
If they turn against us?
If it appears that they're going to turn against us. If they don't
Then,
agree to sit back silent, if they don't agree to door 1 or door 2.
then door 3 is closed, according to me.
Pardon me?
Yeah, door 3 is closed.
I agree it's closed.
Yep.
Door 3 to me is potentially open if there's another viable option. I don't know of it at this point. But
now, if they go with door one or 2, that's when we start investing time and writing a history of the project, and then Dennis and John get to sit down and figure out how we're going to approach this. But we did discuss some ideas, and I'll throw one at you. If we called for a demonstration there, or got other people, Pete Santilli and others, to call for a demonstration, and the armed people met 20, 30 miles away from the courthouse, the armed people, once we got a body of 100 people armed, they would move into the area, but they would leave their weapons in the car, stay near their car, and once we get the second 100, because I think you'd need at least 200 to be effective, that then then once the second 100 arrives, then everybody pulls out their guns, and all of a sudden it's an armed camp. Now, we might lose some demonstrators at that point, but at least we've kind of wiggled our way into an effective posture rather than get the road going in with rifles. So if it was sieging the courthouse, that was something that Ryan and I and Ammon came up with yesterday, just for an explanation of that scenario. But I think it would fall on John, the whole board, but John and Dennis in particular to come up with a plan, but I don't see much point in wasting time until we know if they're going to go with door 1 or door 2.
And now, is turning themselves in, is that an act of going against us? We're here telling them to not turn themselves in. They have the right to just sit quietly in the chair and not say anything, and we'll, as long as they say they're going to sit there in the chair, they don't need to take up arms. They're just going to sit on the couch in the house and hang out. But
I think the purpose,
and that's door 3.
One of the purposes behind the courthouse idea is to demand that they rescind the order, the sentence, that they overturn their decision to sentence the Hammonds to time in prison. And so it almost seems like that would be something that would have to happen before they were supposed to turn themselves in on January 4th.
And so we were looking at perhaps January 1st or more likely January 2nd to begin the siege of the courthouse, to put it in perspective.
Right.
But if they're insistent on turning themselves in, at that point we can expect that they will disavow us. That would be a door 3 situation if they, after the family meeting, they're not willing to work with us to some degree. I think that becomes door 3 if they insist at that point we want to turn ourselves in. Because they will take what they want. They've made the decision, and they'll go public with that decision. We want to turn ourselves in.
Agreed.
Yep. Yeah, because, the BLM is doing this everywhere. It's not the last one. It's not the first one, not going to be the last one. They're constantly doing this. So
we need to find somebody that is willing to work with us if we want to really assure ourselves of a successful consequence of our actions.
It's a constant war. We can't win all the battles, but
yeah, but you don't go into battle if you're going to lose,
Exactly.
And that's where I feel unless we have their support, we're going in to lose the battle. No matter whether we win or lose, we're going to lose the battle.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask Ryan another question, please?
Yes, sir.
Ryan, what is your sense of the Bundys that if we indeed say it's door number 3 and we're out, are they going to take action on their own?
Yes.
And what would those be in your thoughts?
I think that's option 3 is all they were doing, isn't it, Ryan, at this point?
Yeah. The Bundys have made it clear that they're in support of some type of action, regardless of whether the Hammonds, we'll just put it this way, regardless of what the opinion of the Hammonds is of that action. And what
that action might be?
They haven't formulated anything in particular at this point, and a lot of the conjecture and ideas that were coming about between the past 2 days, I'm sure are going to go back to them. It's hard to say, because if I tell the Bundys that we decided that we're not going to do anything about it, that's going to weigh pretty heavily on their decision, I'm sure.
Well, that's not what you can tell them until the Hammonds answer, though, because we've only closed one of 3 doors.
Yes, but it is opposed to their statement, which says that they don't really care what the Hammonds have to say.
Well, then the only thing I see is, like John said, you can put enough people there in front of the courthouse to attract the media, to educate some people, but that's about it.
Well, that would be something Santilli could encourage, not associated with OMD.
Yeah, that's just not we don't want to get involved in protests. Unless that's a decision that everybody has to make. But in my opinion,
that's mine too.
We don't want to get involved in them.
We're civil defiance, not civil disobedience.
Yeah.
But Emmett have that idea that I mentioned in the first part of the conversation, where he would buy or lease the allotments from. There's one possibility that would, from a public relations standpoint, would be beneficial to the whole Hammond side of the story, where he would lease the allotments, then he'd go out and set fires immediately, and then if they don't respond, come out and arrest him. Then there's good press for the Hammond side of the story, but that's between the Bundys and the Hammonds at that point. And I don't know if they've got any other ideas, but that's one that Hammond mentioned yesterday when we had that conversation.
Well, somebody else was about to say something, I think. No?
Nope.
Yeah, Hammond mentioned that he could purchase the allotments from the Hammonds. So the government has rescinded the permits that the Hammonds had in order to graze the land. That is, whatever they refuse to call it BLM land, but it's land managed by the BLM that they had. But they still own the rights to it. It's just that the management agency is not allowing them to use those rights.
The government,
so Hammond,
they have the right to deny the right that was purchased, is what it amounts.
Right. And so the Hammonds could sell those grazing rights to the Bundys, and then what he's getting at is that they would go out there and do a study and show that the land is being choked by the dead grasses, and so a prescribed burn was necessary, and then set the thing up, perform the prescribed burn, which obviously would be the same exact thing that the Hammonds are being put in prison for. Now, Hammond also said that he would do that if he had a protective mechanism to ensure that he wasn't going to be arrested, basically showing the Hammonds that there is a support for it.
Now, see, I believe that option 3 is one that OMD basically we're dealing with Bundy Ranch continuation. That the defense of Hammond's right to deal with the allotment land to the best benefit of grazing on it. That OMD could support that, but the Hammonds are out of the picture at this point. And we know the Bundys are going to stand tall on their responsibilities with regard to the relationship with OMD.
Yes. So at that point, then, we would have to make sure that Ammon or, whatever Bundys are involved are not arrested for setting fire to their own grazing land. But that's more of a demonstration is the difficulty. I mean, you can almost call it a protest.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's more along the lines of defiance than disobedience, because they know what happened to the Hammonds for doing the same thing. So we're talking defiance, which kicks in the criteria for OMD.
Well, yeah, I agree, and surely they're not going to go. They don't test straight protesters very often, but people in defiance they do arrest.
Well, they haven't arrested anybody in defiance directly yet. They've gone after them after the fact.
Yeah.
I have a question. I got a question for you, Ryan.
Yes, sir.
Now you say the Bundys are going to do something regardless, with or without us. If we don't do something along with them, is that going to hurt our relationship with the Bundys?
Well, while Ryan's thinking, the conversation we had yesterday, my impression is if the Bundys do something, that it will be without the Hammonds, except with the possibility of purchase or lease of the allotment land, so that they had legal control or lawful control over it. In that case, I think we should support them. If they come up with something else, I think we'd have to look at the particulars of what they might propose. But I think in that case, it would be
the Bundys really and truly believe, especially after the support they received, well, as a result of the support that they received at the ranch, that the militia is the proper the proper defensive mechanism for the people. And they've been assured and they feel the protection of the militia even to this day. With the people that have stayed at the ranch, and I keep a watchful eye on them and maintain communications. So I think that if we didn't stand with the Bundys, that it would surely diminish our the notion of our fortitude in the cause to them.
The Bundys can only do so much too. It's not like they can kidnap them as well either. They're right there in the same boat. We can only do as much as we can, aside from our falling just short of kidnapping. So
the Bundys believe very in the notion of where there's a will, there's a way. And so if the point being that if they believe, as they've stated in that letter, that a defense needs to be made, regardless of the opinion of the Hammonds, I don't question the Bundys in their conviction. I'll put it that way.
I don't either, but remember the Bundys have given 110% support, and we're dealing with somebody where the militia, for want of another term, the people that OMD calls out, are facing a risk and humiliation. And there would be no humiliation at the Bundy Ranch because we've got their support. But absent that support, we've got to look out for OMD, not for the Bundys, not for the Hammonds. That's why, to me, I would support option 3 or anything else they came up with that was distant from the Hammonds, where the Hammonds weren't a factor in what was happening.
Yeah, I just mean in answer to your question, I do believe that the relationship with the Bundys would be hindered if we did not support an action that they took.
The Bundys took.
A rightful action. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
But Hammond, I think, understood yesterday when we talked that we have to have some degree of support from the Hammonds. At least that's the impression I got from him in that conversation. And I think he fully understands it. He might not agree with it, but he did seem to understand that, you can't help those that don't want to help themselves.
you can lead the horse to water.
What?
I said you could.
One point, gentlemen. Perhaps if we're considering doing a joint thing with the Bundys, it might be useful if it proceeds forward at some point to have one of them present on the call so we're not speculating on what they're thinking or not thinking. I know that you guys have a good relationship with them, but, for example, I've never met the gentleman, so I don't. And it's sometimes easier if you hear their words to see where they're coming from. So those are at least my thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think that would be difficult. And in fact, Hammond Hammond has a very high regard for what it is that we're trying to do. And the whole entire family, Mr. Bundy especially, has a very high regard for this effort as well. So I don't think it would be difficult to have them sit in on any type of call. But there again, they're very thoughtful, and they have their family meetings, and they go through a great depth of discussion on every issue. And I can't see that the Bundys, especially Cliven, is going to approve of a letter, that says basically something needs to be done with or without their approval, and not toe their own line.
Yeah, but he didn't say what should be done, and that I don't know that he would suggest that the thing to do is to go against the Hammonds. Without their approval is one thing. That's doors 1 and door 2, both of them. I mean, and maybe one is even broader that they're 100% behind us, but at least door 2. But door 3 is the one that we were unanimous in door 1, unanimous in door 2, and I don't know if we were unanimous in door 3 or not, but we had at least
3-2.
3-2. Okay.
Yeah.
Who was the other 2?
Me and Dennis.
Okay.
And I'm at the point where I need to see something viable, but again, I'd at least be willing to consider it.
Yeah.
Well, if a plan can be made, but I think at this point I would move that we table this until the family meeting and we get the results of that. But one question before we proceed: did you record any of the conversations, Ryan? With me?
I recorded the conversation between us and Mrs. Hammond, and with the sheriff. Yes.
Okay, so we need to get those in Dropbox so we can get a better sense of Mrs. Hammond and the sheriff. Is it Ward? Is that his name?
Ward, yeah.
So if we can get those in Dropbox, I mean, with the exception of that, I think we need to wait until after the family meeting before we even consider anything. Now, it could be that we could open door 3 if anybody has any ideas, but I think before we proceed and waste our time, we need to know what the Hammond's position is going to be.
I would concur.
Okay. Anybody want to third that?
I agree.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Okay.
I
Okay, I think we're unanimous this time.
So we're going to table this.
I want to go that way is because we have some time. Because the decision point, true one, is until the 4th of January.
Well, it's going to have to be made before Christmas, I think, for us to be able to get done.
No,
we got a lot of planning to do.
Yeah, but it's not going to kill us to spend 2 days waiting on their decision at this point. It's not like
right.
it seems to
it's not
turn
going
on
to hurt anything. Fortunately, we've got a lot more time than we had at the Bundy Ranch.
Yeah. That was all the point I was trying to make. We do have a couple days to see what they're going to do and if anyone else is going to reach out to them.
So, Ryan, you can either get those to me and I'll put them in Dropbox, or you can put them in Dropbox. And then once they're there, whoever puts them there, let everybody know they're there, and we can all get kind of caught up on the inflection in the voices and everything, get a better grasp on or better feel for the position of Mrs. Hammond and Sheriff Ward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just a heads up, I got let's see, about 6:10 now, my time, and I'm going to have to head in at 6:30. I got to do a tag team with the wife and let her go to her AA meeting while I watch the kiddos. So.
Well, I think that's all the business we had on the agenda. I do want, for Ryan's information and those of the rest of you who might know who William Wolf is, he was convicted of both counts. Ryan.
William Wolf? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Ryan, you and I need to talk about that sometime and see if there's anything that we need to start developing or not.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's, as far as an OMD issue, it's not. I mean, I guess if you guys want to familiarize yourself with what's going on with William Wolf,
I can send you a link that'll give you what I've written on it.
Yeah. I think I've already done reading, but are you guys looking at any viable options?
Well, that's what we got to talk about. I don't know if there is one or not. I mean, do we want to break somebody out of prison or not?
Yeah.
I mean, it being transported. He won't be sentenced until January or February. I'm not sure of the sentencing date, and he'll probably remain at Yellowstone, but when he's sentenced, sometime after he's sentenced, he'll be transported.
Yeah.
That's the the option, basically, is, well, and then if you're going to do that, you have to start looking at all political prisoners. See Robbie Massey, Robert Beecher, just to name a couple.
Well, Beecher's in prison already. Massey's in jail and Wolf's in jail. We've got two people in jail. The difference between Massey, though, is Massey is willing to go to the appellate court, so breaking him out wouldn't do any damn good because it would take away the possibility of changing the law. Beecher's in prison already, so that leaves only Wolf as one that has the potential on that. I don't think we're going to go after a prison. I mean, the only logical time it would be in transit. I think. Any opinions on that?
I maintain the possibility of all options as far as such things are concerned, but it's definitely a lot more risky to go after the facility than it is in transit.
Yeah, and I think we've got to win a couple battles before we take on a big battle. And that's the problem.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's one concern on what you just brought up is the fact that given the nature of the mission here, any of them could be the last one.
That's true, but just like we mentioned earlier, there's going to be more ranches where BLM comes in to try and steal their land. We still don't know where Red River's going and where Abbott's going to stand on that. What is this other guy, Clevis? What's the story with him? So there's going to be more. There's always more. We're dealing with the federal government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The octopus.
Okay. Well, I guess that's all we have at this time, right? If you guys want to catch up on the William Wolf stuff, and there again, the only thing that we could possibly be discussing at this point is setting him free. And I don't know that it's any more risky than what we're talking about as far as the Hammonds go. So.
Well, we'd have a willing participant, I know.
And do you have the available resources up that way?
Montana.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to be too revealing on particulars, but any specific action that required a certain skill set and level of experience when we're talking about small unit tactics can be achieved anywhere.
Okay.
Now, if he goes to the prison they had him at before, that's how far was that drive? 180 miles, three and a half hour drive. from Billings to I think it was a federal prison he was in. They were going to put him in. It's in one of my articles, but I think it was a federal facility.
In Great Falls?
No, it was over the northeast side. Let me see if I
Northeast side?
Yeah, let me see what I can. Yeah, it's outside of some small town, but let me see. I think I can find the name real quick. If I can find the folder real quick. Oh, there it is.
Do you still use real folders?
No, I use the little yellow ones on Microsoft. Yes, I do. You know, I've got on Massey, on Wolf, on most of the stories I cover, I do have folders in one of these vertical folder racks, and Massey's is 2 inches thick plus an inch thick on the articles I've written on him. So, yeah, they're on paper, but everything is also in other folders.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your search.
Well, yeah, I'm still old-fashioned that way.
Good.
Crossroads Correctional Center. Shelby, Montana.
No, it doesn't. Oh, Shelby, okay. Yeah, that's pretty much northeast, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of open land between Billings and there.
Oh, yeah. It's strictly open land. The towns that are in between there have a couple hundred people.
Yeah, and so I think Shelby's not very large either.
Right.
The facility, though, is well fortified. I mean, it's got double walls and chain link and everything, but that's why I say the safest place is in transit. Even if they had a lead car and a follow-up car and the transport car, it's a hell of a lot easier than assaulting a fixed position. And it can be done perhaps without gunfire, where assaulting a position would definitely require gunfire.
Either way, you're going to have shit raining down on you real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say it might not require gunfire, but it's definitely going to require a couple explosions.
It's going to require some very good planning and very good escape planning.
Right.
Tannerite. Oh, shit.
But like I say, to me, I think it's impractical to consider going to a prison. If you can't do it in transit, it's foolish.
Well, especially in that region, because, you know, I know you're aware of it, Gary, but just so everybody else is aware, as a plan of a possible operational platform in the future, one of the things that has been discussed, and you can see it on some level with the Bundy Ranch situation, where we were able to create cohesion, very solid cohesion between the protest movement and the militia effort, in the sense that, well, you can look at a lot of those videos and you don't even have any clue that there's a militia effort there. And so the militia effort maintained a strict defensive stance that was separated from the protest movement and integrated into it, because a lot of those protesters were armed and were part of the plan. But the vast majority of the protesters had no clue of what the militia plan was. In that regard, on the same note, an operational consideration is to combine a protest movement with a militia effort in order to provide either infill, exfil, or both. And so, for instance, something like a dynamic entry into a prison, which could take place either from within or outside of a protest, totally outside of the protester's knowledge at all. The exfil, let's say that the safest exfiltration for that operation was directly into a very large group of people who are openly in support of freeing the man. And so, anyway, the same things have been talked about with a couple other instances on how to use a protest movement to secure entry or exit. But okay, so is there anything that anybody else wants to bring up on any of these issues, or?
I got nothing.
No, I got nothing. Just looking forward to listening to those couple of tapes to get a feel for particularly Mrs. Hammond and the sheriff.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yep.
Well, then I guess we'll call it adjourned, and barring any updates, then I'll speak with the rest of you on Sunday. But of course, feel free to give me a call at any time.
Okay, now the tapes of this tonight's meeting will be an A and a B, the first session and the second session, just so you know. They'll be going in Dropbox as well.
Okay, so we should have a total of 4 tapes up there then.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm probably, since I'm going to be on the road here for the next few hours, Gary, whenever I get into your area, I'll just we'll get those recordings uploaded at that time.
Okay, are you heading south now?
Yeah. Geez, it showed that I was. You want to stop the recording?